Hey friends, it's Melvin. Thanks for tuning into this episode. Here's just a few quick things I wanted to notify you guys about before we get started. First up, very soon, new episodes will be releasing Wednesday mornings rather than Tuesday. So don't panic if you don't see a new episode on Tuesday. Just wait a little longer and you'll see it in your feed. Second, we've introduced a mailbag. Check those show notes and toward the bottom you'll see a mailbag link. You'll then be able to text us any questions you might have about movies, the movie industry, or any movie/Christian related questions you might have. Then we'll respond in a future episode, so send us your questions now. Up next, Patreon polls, which are available to Patreon supporters at the $3 tier or higher, have been updated. Supporters can now suggest films or shows to be reviewed at the end of each month. The two most liked submissions will become the options for the Patreon poll, so if you want to hear us talk about your favorite movie or show, join our Patreon and start campaigning. And lastly, whether you're a new or longtime listener, please consider writing a review or rating the Cinematic Doctrine podcast on iTunes and Spotify. Apart from financially supporting on Patreon, these are the two most helpful ways to support the show. And that's it. Enjoy the episode. You're listening to Cinematic Doctrine.
Do you think you're able to get to a point where you're just like kind of sick of Batman?
Why do you ask that?
Well, first off, there's going to be technically 4 or 5 different Batman, like live action, performed by actors, Batman, that are active within this next year or so. In 2022?
Yeah.
Because you have this one, you have the Batman that's in the Titans television show, as well as like his various wards who don the mantle. Then you have both Michael Keaton and Ben Affleck are playing Batman, and there's rumors that there's going to be a new Batman, like some sort of Batman television show that may star Jensen Ackles as Batman, although those rumors are...
Oh, so they'd be carrying him over from voicing Batman.
Yes, because he
voice Batman or Joker? He did one of them.
He voiced Batman in the one of the recent animated films. But like Batman is such a huge cash cow, and even before this film hit theaters, 2 HBO Max television shows are greenlit based on it. In addition
on this Batman?
Yes, so this is starting its own little universe of Batman films. Because to Matt Reeves' credit, like he immediately correctly identified that in order to make the best Batman movie he could, it just could not be tied to the DC film continuity in any way.
Yes, yeah.
And so there's going to be a Penguin show, which has been described as, quote, kind of like a Scarface story. It's going to be about Penguin's rise to power, and it's going to be TVMA, apparently. And there's also a Gotham television show that's going to be on HBO Max and this is something you and I will likely talk about, but a lot of the shows are probably going to be focused on Arkham Asylum in some way. But it'll star Jeffrey Wright reprising his role as Commissioner Gordon, and it's not going to be like the Gotham TV show that was on Fox. But there's going to be a lot of Batman things in general.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think you're going to experience Batman burnout at any point?
I don't think I'll watch all of that. I don't know. I don't think I'm as crazy a Batman fan as I think people expect a geek culture, nerd culture podcaster to be. I like Batman a lot. Out of the comics on my shelf that I'm looking at right now, I have more Batman comics than anything else. But in terms of like watching shows, I don't know if I have time to keep up with so much of what's going on. I'm catching up on Marvel Netflix shows. If there's not a show on Disney Plus that's coming out, which I guess I didn't watch Book of Boba Fett, so whatever. But like the second that ends, something new starts. Like Moon Knight is pretty soon. So I guess it would just be a matter of if it turns out they're good, then I would check them out. But I guess we'd have to wait and see. I don't know. This is just the world we live in now, where you just get inundated with comic book properties and superheroes. World. Like people during Marvel Phase 2 were losing their minds about there being too many Marvel movies, but it was still only like 1.5 Marvel movies a year, because it wasn't always 2 a year. And now it's like, since this movie is 3 hours, it makes me panic about whether or not I'll have to go to the bathroom. So like, I didn't even see when they were advertising the rest of the DC Marvel movies coming out this year before the film started, which was like, what, 4 or 5? I don't know.
Yeah.
It was like this, Flashpoint, Aquaman, Black Adam. Black Adam's honestly the one that I'm most excited for.
The whole JSA's in it. That's crazy.
The who?
Justice Society of America. So it's like Dr. Fate, Atom Smasher, Hawkman. Those types of
well, that's going to be fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that's the one I'm most excited for because it's the one that's most connected to Shazam in terms of what they talked to, at least 10 years ago when they talked about it in development. That's what it was. Because that's the thing with DC movies. They like start talking about them like forever ago. Remember when this movie was going to be directed by Ben Affleck?
Written, directed, starring, produced by Ben Affleck.
These movies are always like, they take 10 years to come out and Marvel's steamrolling them.
This took 5 years of production to become an entirely different movie, set in an entirely different continuity with entirely different people.
Hey there, it's your friendly neighborhood call to action. Just checking in on you. Hope you're doing all right. I'm just stopping by to say, if you enjoy the show, you can always subscribe and write a review for Cinematic Doctrine. There's iTunes, Podchaser, basically anywhere you listen. You can give us a shout out with a thumbs up, 5 stars, gripping positivity. Or if you hate the show, you can say that too.
Wait, what? What are you saying? Why are you saying that?
Well, I'm not going to tell them what to do, Ted. They're free to do what they want. Our analytics say we got a lot of listeners in the US, and they love their freedoms. And you're also free to check out our Twitter. Very active there. We host polls, memes. There's also the Cinematic Doctrine Facebook group called Cinematic Doctrine Facebook Group. If you want to join, just answer the questions, read the rules, and tell them the podcast sent you. Also, you should check out our website. Some really cool stuff there. Editorials, written reviews for movies we haven't had time to cover. Always check out cinematicdoctrine.com when you get the chance. Oh, Ted also told me I shouldn't forget to mention the Patreon. Something about you can support us or something? Wait, Ted, I thought this was like a hobby thing. You want me to
expand Cinematic Doctrine. You know this already.
Right. Yeah, I forgot. I'm the one who put all this together. Yeah, Cinematic Doctrine has a Patreon. For as little as $3 a month, you can gain access to early uncut episodes of the podcast. Oh, and did I mention, you get to tell us what to do. That's right, each month you get to vote on a movie we discuss on the show. Anyways, I gotta run, so I'll see you guys later.
So, as we alluded to a second ago, the Batman, continuing the tradition of them not wanting to make Batman movies, but because they keep making new Batman movies in separate continuities, they have to keep finding new interesting ways to title a movie Batman. So continuing that, The Batman was initially slated to be the solo movie for Ben Affleck's version of the character, who we saw in Batman vs. Superman, Justice League, the Zack Snyder one, and a brief cameo in the Suicide Squad. Initially, it was slated, the script was co-written by him and Jeff Johns, who is someone I generally like, though apparently he's relatively polarizing for various reasons that I'm not aware of. But Jeff Johns is a comic book writer. Notably, he wrote the Batman Earth 1 comics, which this movie actually takes a lot of inspiration from. Initially, test footage of Batman fighting Deathstroke was released online, with Joe Manganiello, sorry for pronunciation of his name, set to reprise his role, which he kept getting told he was going to be in things in the DC movies, and then he just never shows up in them.
And he wanted to be in them, didn't he? Like
he's a big nerd. He loves comic books. He loves Deathstroke. He just looks like Slade Wilson. So anyway, however, initially the production stalled out for various reasons that we've talked about in previous episodes. Ben Affleck having personal problems. Thankfully, he's on the other side of that now. He's apparently sober and all that. So we wish him well on that journey of his. But for various reasons, eventually a change was needed. And so Matt Reeves entered negotiations. Matt Reeves both wrote the film with Robert Pattinson in mind for the role, and also straight up said that if he was going to make it, he could not make a Batman movie that existed in the continuity of the DC films, partially because of what we'll get into, the much more grounded, realistic setting. And upon seeing the film, this is not a movie where I believe Superman exists. Batman himself seems to even struggle to take down 3 or 4 guys, let alone a world where metahumans and people with abilities exist or anything like that. And so initially while Robert Pattinson was a frontrunner, Nicholas Hoult, who you may remember is playing Beast in the X-Men movies, as well as the one main guy in Mad Max Fury Road who sprays his teeth with silver paint or whatever, However, Robert Pattinson eventually won out. So the Batman takes place in a Batman who is in his second year of being the Batman. It is a grounded, realistic world. However, Gotham, unlike many other versions of the live-action Caped Crusader, is a world already inhabited by many of his rogues galleries, taking cues from comics like Batman Year One, Batman The Long Halloween. This is a world filled with all kinds of crooks and criminals. Gotham is always awash in black and red. It is a horrible, depressing, terrible place to live, as is tradition. However, unlike many other versions of the live-action Batman, this is a Gotham City that feels alive. It feels grimacing and almost malevolent in its own existence. While the Gotham is used to an underworld filled with men like Carmine Falcone, Salvatore Maroni, and the Penguin, who is not yet ascended to being a crime lord, Gotham is gripped by the work of a very Zodiac killer-inspired serial killer who is self-identifies as the Riddler as he begins targeting and killing men in prominence. However, it appears that the men he's killing are themselves not totally morally righteous, so the Batman has to go out and solve the crimes and stop the serial killer while constantly getting sidetracked by all kinds of other things, including Selena Kyle, aka Catwoman, who has her own agenda and is trying to pull him in other directions, as well as reckoning with his own past as Bruce Wayne. Now, one thing that I appreciated about the movie is that there's no flashback to the fateful night in the alley where the gun fires and the pearls fall to the ground and a boy starts to cry. Thank God they didn't include that, as every Batman thing ever has.
Yeah.
We know that happens. And what's interesting is that this is a Batman who is not interested in being Bruce Wayne at all. Andy Serkis plays Alfred, who seems unhappy with this decision of his. And this is very much something that is a factor in Batman Zero Year, which Scott Snyder wrote, which he gets a shout out in the credits. And despite this, Robert Pattinson does play a great Bruce Wayne. He is filled with anger and resentment, and there's a heaviness to him in everything he does. You can just see it on his face and eyes in every scene. This is a Bruce Wayne who hates being Bruce Wayne with every fiber of his being, which actually thematically pays off in the end, in my opinion. And the movie is 3 hours. It is heavy on the noir and Batman standing around while people talk. Not so heavy on the action, though. When it does happen, it's very clear it takes place in a world that has seen Nobody and John Wick and The Raid, particularly the fact that Batman gets punched and hit a lot. Though when he does finally hit back, it certainly does feel like the Batman is fighting back. It is a long journey. It is slow. It is moody. However, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the unraveling of the serial killer mystery. All the performances across the board are great. Paul Dano does a lot with the little screen time he's given. But this is very much a Batman movie for all the people who've been clamoring and saying, gosh darn it, as a DC fan, I want a mature adult comic book movie. And Matt Reeves said, well, here you go. Here's a slow 3-hour movie that's mostly dialogue. You have to actually sit there and watch a long movie. There's not lots of blinkies and things exploding. The Flash doesn't run by and drop some quits. Superman
nobody fights in a sky city.
No, there's no laser in the sky. Aliens don't show up. It is a slow noir that is something that was very much up my alley. It's very much the Batman movie I've been waiting for a long time. I won't spoil too much from here on out because as a mystery, any details at a certain point are themselves spoilers because you're watching a mystery unravel. But I quite enjoyed it. Melvin, what did you think?
Yeah, I wrote down a list of things I liked and things I didn't because I felt that that's an easy way to parse out information. The things I definitely liked were, well, it's funny, like all the things I liked were things that were almost specifically comic book things translated to the screen, both in terms of comic book media things and then also things specific to good Batman comics. By the comic book media things, I mean, there's a decent amount, I wish there was more, but a decent amount of voiceover from Batman talking about things. The movie starts that way with like a diary entry monologue. And I really like that because one of my favorite things about comic books in general is the panel where nobody's talking, but you have in the top right is a box of text because it's what somebody's thinking. And I always like that because you can linger on the visual and the correlation between the text and the visual and experience the story without someone necessarily saying something in particular. So I liked that. And there were a couple scenes where this actually happens, both in terms of just a character monologuing And then there's a later scene where Selena Kyle has to do something and Batman is talking to her through like an earpiece. And that felt very reminiscent of it as well, which I quite liked. I also really like the relationship between Batman and Detective Gordon.
Yeah.
I liked a lot of the Batman and police stuff. I thought that was really interesting, seeing the dynamic of like, do we like Batman? Do we need Batman? Shouldn't we arrest Batman? That kind of thing was interesting. Selena Kyle in general was very cool. I like that they were just a rogue that just wants to steal. Very much channeling the horse from Over the Garden Wall. That is all.
That is definitely what they were drawing on. The
yeah, they weren't drawing from the comics. They're just big fans of Over the Garden Wall. Surprised Elijah Wood didn't play the Selena Kyle. But anyways, just gender bent. Where's my gender bent Batman movie? We got our comic book Batman movie. Give me my gender bent one.
That's what people want, is they want a male Catwoman. That's what the fans are clamoring for.
That's just the marvelous Ladybug, right? Isn't that the French guy? The French friend is a cat in that. Anyways, there's your movie. Voiceover Batman, Rogue Selena Kyle, Detective Gordon. The ensemble of characters felt good because it's like you said, like this is a world that's already populated. Like Batman has to exist now because it's Bruce Wayne witnessing how horrible and how terrible and specific everything is. It's a cool dynamic to switch what is basically common in comic books, which is take all the characters but change the order of how they work, and seeing it done on screen. So like I think most people are used to the idea that Batman came first to fight crime, and then all these rogues galleries people are born out of him. And so having the idea that like all of them seem to have just been born at the same time. And I guess, I don't know, something's in the water making people go crazy and wear Batman suits or put paint on their face. But the idea that Batman comes and Penguin's already kind of active, but like you said, not big. All that's kind of interesting. And just seeing how different writers take different characters is really interesting. I remember having a conversation with someone who didn't understand comic books and did not like the idea that different authors could just come in and take the characters in different directions. And I said,
right,
but that's kind of what's interesting about this IP that's existed for almost 100 years now, is that you can just have different authors take what they like, write it and publish it, and then the audience decides what they like or not.
Yeah, you get a it's like a canon by consensus.
Yeah, and it's interesting because of all mediums, you figure comic book fans would be the most malleable to change, because that's how comic books have always been. And yet they're usually the most insufferable in terms of things being changed.
Right.
Which is ridiculous.
Yeah. To your point about like the idea that's interesting that like Batman is more born out of necessity rather than what's traditionally, at least in the movies, been a thing where Batman shows up to fight a bunch of regular thugs with guns. And then, oh no, a villain shows up because whatever. This movie does a good job of sort of splitting the difference where all of these sort of like exaggerated gangsters already exist, but then someone like the Riddler is partially inspired by the Batman, or the act of putting on a costume is perhaps something that Batman inspires, but this element already exists. He's just causing the people to become more theatrical in their application. I thought that was kind of interesting. But.
Totally. I like the Detective Batman stuff. That feels really good because really in any medium, except for the comics, we haven't had Detective Batman. Arkham games are not Detective Batman. It's stand in room, press button, scan. That is not detective work. Detective work is playing the first Penumbra game where it tells you need to learn a cipher and then complete a puzzle that literally requires pen and paper. So I used a guide to skip that part. No one's going to do that in a video game. So the Arkham games, although interesting and have the length of a detective story, never really had Detective Batman. And none of the movies really did. I think Dark Knight had a little bit of Detective Batman. But not a whole lot. And so having that here was really cool. Yeah. And who better to do it than with the Riddler? I mean, none of the other guys are necessarily that smart. And so Riddler was good choice for that. Manic Riddler is good too. I guess we'll talk more about that later. And then the aesthetic was interesting in terms of setting things apart. Although I do think the aesthetic itself, the aesthetic being very Arkham game-esque, almost every set looks like a location in the Arkham games, which was very cool.
For me, that
at
worked
times.
a lot. So
Yeah, that stuff works. The fact that like there are no city streets in Gotham that don't have like something over top of it, but even if you have something over top of you, you still get poured down on rain.
yes,
So it doesn't matter. Like even in the trailer when there's a fight that's very much in the beginning, but in the trailer I thought like it looks like they're in a subway. They're fighting in a subway. Why is there rain? And it's like it's not a subway. It's actually just open air. But still, that was all great. And also just taking advantage of weather to be an aesthetic. There's a lot of movie making magic here. And really, if you just have rain in a movie, I'm going to call it movie making magic. But there's a lot of that going on where there's big effects, cars exploding, and using CG for animals because you have to now, which is good. That's a good choice as long as the CG looks good. And rain, all that stuff feels good. So the movie feels good. But Dan, I had a point in the movie where I literally thought this movie is just okay. I genuinely had that happen to me maybe around 2 hours where I was just like, this movie's just fine. I have been trying to figure out in the last 12, I guess it's been about 12 hours, 12 hours since I left the theater, of like, what is it that like hasn't clicked with me? Catherine said, well, the movie had no heart. And I was like, oh man, yeah, that is 100% true.
Heart as in like there isn't a montage where he works out and like to go fight the Riddler. Like what do you mean like heart? Just
there's really like, well, so there's a point in the film where there's character drama taking place, and my first thought was this is boring, get back to the detective stuff. And then I actually thought that again later on in the movie. I thought it like twice, and I found a lot of and like the first eye roll of drama I had is there's a scene where Batman just basically, sure, Batman doesn't look at the screen and say like I'm rich as a joke, but he does essentially look directly into the screen as if talking to Alfred and says, you're not my father. And like, I was like, that's bad dialogue. I just didn't. And it's like 12 minutes into the movie, this happens. And I sort of just went, okay, all the drama in this movie is going to be bad. The detective work is going to be great. The movie heavily just goes straight into detective work and Seven-esque slasher, hidden serial killer stuff. And that's all great, but I was like, man, I don't think this character drama is going to work. And yeah, I did not find the character drama very effective throughout the entire film, which is unfortunate because essentially the movie ends on character drama, and I sort of was just waiting for the credits to come. So that was disappointing, because what I like about Batman is his dramatic character. The reason I always mention Dick Grayson being Batman is because of the character drama of the idea that Nightwing stops being Nightwing, becomes Batman, raises Batman's assassin son, Damian, and is constantly questioning like, why am I doing this? As he's doing things. And also the fact that as Dick Grayson is Batman, he's a very different kind of Batman, is its own dramatic character trait. And I just found a lot of the drama in this film very uninteresting. And so that was annoying. And there's not much of it. But the problem is, in a movie that's going to be 3 hours, I really hope everything's worthwhile. And the second something's not worthwhile, I wish I knew when this scene was starting, so I could, I don't know, go to my fridge and get some food or something. Oh wait, I can't because I'm at a movie theater. So this just doesn't work for me. So I didn't like that. I think the ending was a little too big for the kind of movie it was trying to be. There is a particular thing at the end of the movie which we'll definitely talk about, and I just won't mention anything about it right now because I guess you could call it spoilers. And then I think it was exactly what I expected it to be when I talked to you. I said this movie will be too self-serious, and that will be its downfall in certain scenes. Not the whole film, just certain scenes. Because there are scenes when the movie actually actively looks funny, and then the music is booming as though it's supposed to be really serious. And so I just and that's just in terms of visuals. So the example I'll give is in the trailer you watch as Penguin's car gets flipped over and then Batman's walking towards him and there's fire behind it. Visual looks really cool, and the music's booming during this sequence.
And he's upside down in the
He's upside down. Which, by the way, the end of that scene got claps and I don't think it was claps because like, yeah, my hero. It was because it was really well executed, so people just physically felt the need to cheer or something. And I did not clap myself, but I felt that, and so I thought, great filmmaking, and that was a sequence of really good filmmaking. The intensity of that scene was really good. But then as Batman gets closer and the music's getting louder, Batman just bends over to look at him, and something in my head went, this looks silly. Why'd they keep that? Like, things just look silly, but the music tries to make it serious, and then that's it. I don't know. So I don't think this movie is as worthy of a 3-hour runtime as it wants to be. And I just watched, and this is going to be like, this comparison's ridiculous because it's basically being compared to one of the greatest movies of all time. But I watched The Godfather this week in theaters, 4K restoration, looked beautiful. 3 hours, not a single scene wasted. And just having the contrast of another 3-hour movie experience with this one, it just feels strange to me. And I'm even comparing to another long movie like the Zack Snyder cut of Justice League, which has no right being 4 hours, but at least I watched it at home. So like, I'm also thinking about how I'm engaging the film. Like, I could just pause that movie and do something else. But in the experience of seeing this in theaters, which I know people was going to be arguing for, I just don't know if it like, something is not clicking for me, and it's enough to make me go, this movie's just okay. 7 out of 10.
I'm just sort of wondering, what is it about the character drama that you don't seem to care for?
It could be. So one of the things is that I could like older Bruce Wayne, as opposed to young Bruce Wayne. I mean, I've told you before, and I've said it on the podcast, I didn't necessarily like Batman Year One, the comic. I think it's just okay. I know that a lot of people are like, but that's great. That's really good stuff. But I don't know, it's fine. And maybe you're laughing at me because actually that's a common opinion. But like, I don't know. I think I like older Batman who balances more with his Bruce Wayne persona, because it is Batman. Bruce Wayne is the persona, not Batman. The real person is the insane guy wearing the bat suit. And so missing out on the Bruce Wayne stuff, I guess I was disappointed with, but I don't know. And I don't think I really was convinced of the Bruce Wayne character in this, which is the character drama as opposed to the Batman character, which also for some reason in this film felt the most distant, like felt so bizarre to me to see this man in a batsuit in a very real world, which I get is part of the character and part of the idea of Batman. And then I don't know, I guess I was also talking to Catherine too about like having just watched an obscene amount of the Marvel Netflix shows, not comparing to Marvel here. I'm just comparing to long running not self-serious, but long running prestige adaptions of comic book material.
Specifically Daredevil, which is a very close approximation to Batman.
Which I guess I could say specifically to Daredevil. I was like, is this even the right medium for this character, for this particular interpretation of this character? And I don't know. Obviously I'm in the minority here. I mean, this movie is not getting as crazy reviews as Dark Knight was. And I even walked out and said to Kaz, like, yeah, not as good as Dark Knight based on memory. And not because, a Joker, Heath Ledger, so good. Ha ha ha. Why so serious? Which seems to be how most people react to that movie. I just think that movie's a lot tighter, but I think the movie's good, but I don't know if it's 3 hours sitting in a theater and you'll get a sensory overload headache at the end. Good, but it's good. And it has, like I said, it has a lot of stuff I liked. I even said to Kaz, like, how can it have all this stuff I like, which is 80% of the movie, and then I'm just sort of feeling just ambivalent about it as a whole? I don't know. I don't really understand it. And I'm trying to figure that out. And this is after we were in our chat group going like, how does Ben Shapiro have an opinion about movies when he's a political commentator? What's the point? Like, why do people care? Or we have a friend in our chat group who said, I heard Batman's bad. And I was like, who you hear that from? Not accusing him, just curious. And it's just like a Facebook friend talking to another Facebook friend. Yeah. And they don't give any reason for why. They're just like, it's bad. Oh, that's a bummer.
It's boring.
Yeah. Yeah, like, okay, whatever.
All right.
Oh, this was something I didn't write down in my notes, but it was another thing that I liked that then turned into a dislike. And it was another comic book thing. It was, I like the idea of lingering on scenes for a long time because it's like the pace of reading a comic book where I can linger on a panel for as long as I want and then move on. But then as the movie keeps going, I guess Batman only pushed a little bit on the toggle stick as opposed to all the way on the controller because he only walks very, very, very slowly all the time. And I know he's soaking in scenery so he can scan it with his cool little gadget in his eye, but your base speed is a little bit higher, buddy. You can speed it up. I think there was just, I don't know. I think there was a point where the movie did not continue to improve or wow me or introduce new things that made it worthwhile for me. But it's an okay movie. And I know that I'm going to be, I think most people's opinions will be closer to Daniel's out of this episode than mine, which is fine.
Which I have not really shared yet. So
but,
you don't know. I could have hated it for all you know.
I assume you liked it because whenever I was like, I texted Daniel because we're in a chat group with people who are going to see this movie at all different times. So we never talk about spoilers until we've all seen it. So I was like, let me try and gauge like from Daniel how this movie's going to be. So what did I say to you?
I was very specific and clear about my feelings on it.
And then we talked about the Punisher movies, which are now available on Peacock. Where is this? Because I liked the way I asked. Oh yeah,
that group chat is just a nightmare. It's constantly going.
I said, Daniel, tell me in the least direct and non-contextual way what you thought about the movie. And Daniel just goes, Batman. And I said, well, like on a scale of kitchen forks to overtime hours, where do you place it? And he just goes, Batman.
Batman.
Which as far as I'm concerned,
Batman.
I know you're a Batman stan, so I figure you really like this
love
movie,
Batman.
but we'll see. But yeah, what did you think about the movie? Well, actually, I want you to respond to what do you think about the movie, and also, if you completely disagree with me, what did you think about my response?
Well, I'm not entirely clear on what it is by your admission, you're not even sure what it is about the movie that caused you not to connect with it.
I think it's part of the character drama, which this movie has very little of.
Right, which is why I think it's so interesting that it's such a large factor of your feelings towards the movie. Because I'm even trying to get like a base for like what it is about the character drama that doesn't connect with you, which I get that occasionally it's very blunt to almost the point of being silly, like him just telling Alfred, you're not my father, like that. It's very blunt, but like for me that was fine because I fully believe that this Bruce Wayne would say that. Like this is not an emotive
Bruce Wayne who actively listens to Nirvana deep cuts. Like it's so great.
It's Something in the Way is one of my favorite Nirvana songs.
It's a good song, and it's one of my favorites too. It's
the last official track on Nevermind, though. On all digital releases, they cut the secret track as its own like last track.
Yeah, isn't that strange? Technically, Bruce Wayne should have listened to the 20-minute version of this song.
With just all the silence, and then it goes.
And 18 minutes later, it just starts with the last track out of nowhere, the secret track.
I mean, that opening sequence where it's just him monologuing about shadows, and you get such a feel. Like Gotham is this alive, breathing place where Batman is one of the many ghosts that haunts it. It's this wonderful sequence where he talks about the shadows and the power of Batman as an entity that exists, where when you look over your shoulder and you're afraid that someone's going to stop you from mugging someone, or you second guess like carjacking because Batman might show up, that's Batman and no other sequence.
I like that Batman is technically framed like the slasher killer villain in this movie for about an hour and a half. That's kind of how he's handled.
It's great.
You don't want to do bad stuff because you basically like Michael Myers. Don't have premarital sex or he's going to show up. He's going to beat you
Jason could show up out of nowhere and just stab you, and that's basically what Batman is. He's one of the monsters here, and like they make a very specific point to show that people are just as afraid of him as they are any of the gangsters or villains in Gotham.
I liked the shot when, in very early, when Commissioner Gordon, not Commissioner yet, Detective Gordon is going to a crime scene, and it's clear you're POV Batman, and characters are looking at you. Your camera's up high because you're really tall. I thought that was a good sequence of helping you experience more of what Batman is like, and Batman's intimidating to everybody, absolutely everybody. No one. I feel like Batman is the kind of character that if he's in the room with you, you're immediately thinking, what does he know about me? And am I safe? Which is really good stuff.
And you're also just like, oh man, is he just gonna snap and kill somebody right now? Like, because they don't know this guy, they don't know what he's about. They have a general understanding, like, okay, like they mention that he doesn't use guns, he doesn't kill people, but like outside of that, there's this like there's a great mystique around the character, which I think all great Batman stories, they're very careful how Batman is presented as far as his mystique is, like how he's perceived by the characters. People often talk about him with a certain level of respect and reverence, which I think is always important to building the character within this world, because he is not a powered person, but so much of his influence is in people's respect and fear of him. And then it cuts to just all these scenes of just Gotham with something in the way playing, and I'm like, I could watch 3 hours of just this, just like Batman monologuing over shots of Gotham while Nirvana plays. Like I could watch that for hours and hours and hours. But yeah, like the actual character drama, and you're not the first person to point this out, which is there's not a lot of just scenes of Bruce Wayne being Bruce Wayne in this movie. 90% of the movie, he's in the suit.
And even the one, it's like he doesn't do anything as Bruce Wayne, and then it's like, oh, we need Batman. And so then they just get back to Batman, which is fine. I actually really like that scene and how it turned into it. But
yes, it's because that's later in the movie. It's hard to gauge when in the movie. I guess maybe midpoint, Bruce Wayne has to attend a funeral. This is not something Batman can do. He can attend a funeral,
which is a very, very good scene.
It's awesome.
It's really good.
Because for so many reasons. First off, it's your first time really interacting with Carmine Falcone, who's played by John Turturro, in secretly one of the best performances of the movie. He's not in a lot of the marketing, but he is great in this. And Bruce Wayne is visibly uncomfortable being in public. He does not want to be there. He does not want to talk to you or interact with anybody. He's only there because he really has to be. And he's interacting with people. All his interactions are stilted and awkward. Someone talked about how much they hate the Waynes, not realizing they're talking to Bruce Wayne. A politician tries to get Bruce to like really get into their pocket. And the only thing that Bruce Wayne really pays attention to, there's only two things. First, he perceives that the Riddler is probably there watching. But the other is the son of the man who has died is there and grieving. And obviously, because Batman just has this telekinetic connection with every orphan who's ever existed.
Yeah, yes.
But he pays attention to that kid. He notices that kid more than anyone else. And that's the thing that really sticks out to him. And it's this great moment of characterization for him where he is so unbothered or unconcerned with everyone else in the room. He doesn't want to be there, but he really deeply feels for this kid who's going through a similar pain to him, which pays off because when something bad happens, when one of the Riddler events takes place, he is the only person to really pay attention to the kid in order to save the kid, or he tackles the kid out of harm's way. It's a great sequence, and it's one of the only times that we really see Batman be Bruce Wayne. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, the character drama isn't the strong thing in the movie. Like all the Catwoman Batman stuff is pretty good for what it is. It doesn't grip me or anything. But I think the strength of the movie is less on that and more a theming and understanding of the Batman as a thing that exists, which is what the movie mostly focuses on. Because like when you think about character drama, it's like, okay, there's stuff with Alfred and Batman, but Alfred's really not in this movie much.
Right.
Andy Serkis does a lot with what he's given, but there's the scene in this is one of the things that I think we agree on. Like, there's a scene later in the movie where Alfred is, I guess we're sort of getting into spoilers now. I don't know when we hit a logical point to transition to spoilers, but there's a scene where Alfred is in the hospital and he's connecting with Bruce Wayne, I should say, and they're talking about how much they care about each other. And it just doesn't do much for me. Andy Serkis his performance is really good in the scene. Bruce Wayne and Robert Pattinson's doing the brooding thing. And again, Bruce Wayne seems uncomfortable with trying to express and emote, which I am totally fine with for this version of the character, because I feel like it's an intentional choice he's making. But by proxy, it doesn't hit me very hard because I don't get a sense that it's hitting. I guess it's hitting Bruce Wayne very hard. A great little scene that really shows this is there's a scene where he assumes that he's not going to be Batman anymore. And he just looks at Commissioner Gordon and goes, "You're a good cop." And he walks away because that's all he can really drum up to say. That's all he can say to really connect with somebody is, "You're doing a good job." And he leaves. And I was like, okay, this is like a borderline emotionally stunted, almost an adult. And I'm totally okay with that. But yeah, in terms of things I really liked, I love the way they talk about Batman. I love that this is actual deconstruction that has something meaningful to say about deconstructing Batman. Because for me, like, not to rag on Zack Snyder stuff, I know people really like him, but I think there's something very lazy, not just with him. This is something a lot of people do, where they think deconstructing Superman or Batman just means you make them do something they usually wouldn't. What if Superman was evil? What if Batman just shot guns at people? But like deconstruction, you have to have something to say about that. Like you can't just point at Superman being evil and go, "That's really something, huh?" You have to really draw something out about Superman as a character in doing that, which I feel like I feel like Injustice doesn't do that. I didn't really get much of that Batman vs Superman. Here, there's a deliberate attempt to actually try and address what some people's view as issues with Batman, which I've been over this. I think a lot of the criticisms of the Batman character are kind of dumb because the reason that, like, why does Batman just spend all his time creating social programs? It's like, because that would be an extremely boring movie. If you think this movie's boring, man, oh man, a 3-hour movie of Batman just like in meetings going like, all right, so if we divest our funds here.
And also like that's what Thomas Wayne was. And in the world of this, in the world of, in Gotham in general, Thomas Wayne is the guy who tries to do social programs. It doesn't work. So then Batman is essentially, I will do social programs and
with my
beat up
fists.
mental patients. Yeah, with my fists. So like,
yeah, and it's like, I understand trying to update something like, but this is a vestige of the 30s and 40s. Like their view of like, obviously the portrayal of police is already becoming sort of a topic of discussion, but I'm really glad that there's a lot of media blowback of like, look, the politics in Gotham don't make any sense because Gotham's not a real place.
Right.
Nothing about Gotham makes sense. Why is there an infinite number of henchmen that Batman can just punch forever without any seeming repercussions? Why is there simultaneously a ton of clean cops and a ton of corrupt cops? How many cops are in this city? Why would anyone run for office when everyone who's in a position of power dies all the time? Gotham doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't. Like, you just point out, it's just raining everywhere, no matter where the buildings are.
Which is awesome.
Which is great. Aesthetically, that's amazing. But if you're going to start like really, let's examine the politics of Gotham, a city that doesn't exist in a world that doesn't exist, filled with superheroes and aliens. What's the politics of that? I understand that. Like, that you want to try and examine something because that's what movies are. But and in that regard, I think this movie does a pretty good job of attempting to tackle some of what I consider to be tired, but I do like the angles they take on it here. There is one scene in particular, which I'm pretty sure you know what I'm talking about, where they really actually confront the themes of what the movie is trying to say. I think it does it a pretty good job, and it's helped by some really good performances in the moment. But again, like, if you think really too hard about Batman, it won't make sense because there's no way you can make any of this make sense. I'm sorry, but yeah, I liked the end kind of big triumphant moment in the movie. I think it works for the story they're trying to tell, which I know that's kind of divisive because some people, the movie has like 4 endings. Like, it reaches several points in the movie could just end and cut to credits, and it just keeps going. Where I think you could cut probably 15 to 20 minutes out of this movie, and it would probably improve.
It's possible,
vastly,
but it's also like when I was
but
thinking about the comics and the ones that succeed well, it's usually like this, where like there's sort of an A plot and a B plot, and then sometimes the B plot turns into the A plot because the A plot has to pause because Batman needs more information. And so he has to go off on a side quest. And in doing so, he gets the information to move forward. That might work more in a comic because the medium wants you to buy more issues.
Yeah, plus it lends itself to you can read it at your own pace.
Exactly. Because a movie is just, you have to sit down and take it. And I think as a miniseries, that makes more sense because it's digestible, pausable. There's chapters. And I really do think that's what makes miniseries so beneficial is when in fact, it's why certain miniseries are frustrating to watch because they end in a way that doesn't feel like a chapter ending. And that can be a benefit to the medium. Whereas in a movie like this, it's like, it kind of has to have some this is why editing is so important. It has to pace into itself. And that can get a little difficult. I didn't get the feeling though, that this movie has I didn't get the feeling that this movie has points where it's going to end. I think most people get that when and it's in the trailer, so I'm not spoiling anything, but like when Riddler's going to be in prison, I think some people might, if they're small brain, will go, oh, the movie's almost over. It's like, oh no, if you know how the Riddler works, obviously he's like, if he's not freaking out yet, there's more.
You've seen this movie where the genius guy who's put all of the puzzles pieces together for his Rube Goldberg machine of a plan is like, aha, exactly. You've actually activated the final part of my plan. Like, this is movies. This is how it works.
This is the JRPG second stage of the final boss. Like, this is
the boss is going to turn into a winged creature now. You know?
Yeah. Batman kills God in this movie. It's crazy. And he defeats him with the power of friendship.
But before we move on, this is the thing that a lot of people were going to be talking about. Obviously, you and I were this is one of the things we were excited about. But how did you feel about Rob Pattinson's performance in the movie?
It wasn't. How can you talk about it? It's not. He's not really there. Batman's there, but not really Pattinson. It was funny though, because in the scene when he's talking to Alfred, he puts on the same face as Edward Cullen because he doesn't know how to emote, so he starts doing random emotions, which is just like Edward Cullen having to hold back emotions. It was kind of funny, but that is fine. But like, he's not really doing much. So I one of the things that I like about Raimi's Spider-Man is that he doesn't have his mask on very much because it gets ripped off. And I really think that's benefit to Tobey Maguire, because then you can watch Tobey Maguire act. But in this, half of Pattinson's face is covered for 90% of the movie. So I don't get to watch him act. And I don't know how much of him is doing stunts or not. So I don't even know if I'm able to talk about his physical performance much. That's genuinely how I feel. I walked away thinking like, okay, like, I don't really know if he's doing a good job or not. But it's not distracting me if he's doing anything poorly or not. So that's just how that's how I feel about it. I get that, like, I use this in a just a general sense. I know normies will probably step away going, that was pretty good. Shoves Pop-Tarts in the mouth. I don't know. I don't
Pop-Tarts?
I don't know. Popcorn. I was thinking popcorn. I was thinking pretzel and Pop-Tart at the same time, or popcorn. Maybe I just want some Pop-Tarts.
What food do you eat at the theater you go to?
They AMC, they have their Bavarian Legend. I haven't gotten it myself. Every time I've gone, they don't have it.
Is it pretzels, Pop-Tarts, and popcorn? No,
it's a giant pretzel, but then I was thinking popcorn because I was like, more people know about popcorn at movie theaters. That's more normal. AMC, by the way, their food is good. That pizza, if you get it, the 4 cheese thin crust, it is a good pizza.
So far, when I asked how you felt about the movie, you said it's no Godfather. And when I asked what do you think of Robert Pattinson's performance, you said the food at AMC theaters is delicious.
This is the scale between kitchen fork and overtime hours.
I will say one of our I don't know if he listens to the show, but he's one of our main Twitter interactors, Eli Price, who tweeted at me. He linked me to his Letterboxd review. He specifically was very complimentary about Robert Pattinson's performance, partially on the grounds of both the presence he brings to scenes where he's just present as Batman, but also he felt that you got a lot out of Robert Pattinson's eyes. Like when you look at his face and you look at the way he's observing and interacting with the scenes, often contrasted with much more, I don't want to say exaggerated, but much more lively performances. Like Penguin, for example, Colin Farrell is tremendously great at this. He's so much
very
fun.
Good. Very good.
He's unrecognizable in the best possible way. When he's being ridiculous and Batman's just sort of there, and you can, like, for me and also Eli here, we got a sense of like there is this brooding anger towards everyone in every scene, particularly that sort of thing. So you didn't really get any of that in him and his scenes.
I mean, I got it. Like, I saw that he was using his eyes, knowing like, well, that's all the camera's gonna see and whatever. Like, there were certain interactions and dialogue because he's constant. Like I'm getting some Batman Hush vibes in the sense that he's constantly questioning everybody.
Yes, yeah.
Tim Sale got a credit at the end for special thanks, but Tim Sale being the author for Batman Hush, where like when Selena Kyle in particular is saying things, Batman's have conflicted between his sexual feelings, because I don't know if Batman has any ability for emotions, but clearly attraction to Selena Kyle, but also not trusting Selena Kyle. So there's a point when Selena says something in particular and Batman reacts to it, but it's only in his eyes and it's very momentary. But like, it's not a lot. It's mostly detective work, which is fine. I liked all that. But I don't think there's much to it. I think if he had more, If he had either more Bruce Wayne or Batman in the Batcave sequences, where when he's in the Batcave, he's Batman just without the cowl, then I think I would have more to say about his performance. But otherwise, I mean, it's a good performance. I know he's a good performer, so I'm not in the minority of people who saw him in Twilight and are now seeing him this going, it's funny. He was a vampire and now he's back. Isn't that funny? Like, oh my gosh,
This
we
guy
still
loves
probably
bats,
got though. Like,
you know,
oh
yeah.
man, like just cringe. But like,
Didn't even see him in Tenet, you know?
Yeah, they didn't
see him in Tenet.
Maybe they saw him in Tenet, but then all those people died because they got the coronavirus right after. So I don't know.
There's one person who's like, I've only seen water for elephants. What happened to that Robert Pattinson guy?
Yeah, that's really crazy. Wouldn't that be awesome?
They didn't see Twilight because they're not really into horror, you know, vampires. So but they love Batman.
That's exactly. So I don't feel the need to defend his acting. I know he's good. I'm the one who at work, everyone's talking about Batman, not my coworkers, just customers, and like going, is he going to be even good? I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, he's going to be fine. Like, so whatever. If I had a list of tier rankings for his performances, this wouldn't necessarily be at the top. It's a okay movie, but it wouldn't be at the top.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't put it as I wouldn't put it near the top. And just shout out to Mark in the Cinematic Doctrine Facebook group who noted that for him, he felt that Pattinson gave Bruce a new dimension by focusing on the sad melancholy that you feel. He said you can feel it weighing him down in every scene. But
yes, yeah,
I've become that person. Like I saw my friends Jason and Zach, and I immediately became the person who was like, "You need to watch Good Time. It's on Hulu right now." You know, I've become that annoying guy.
Well, Good Time is a really good movie, so probably his best performance.
I think we need to get into spoilers now because particularly...
Yeah, there is quite a few things to talk about in terms of things later, too, like things after this movie in terms of developments, but we'll have to see. But
one of the main spoiler things I want to talk about is specifically Paul Dano's Riddler, because I do feel like aspects of that character are revealed as the film goes on.
For sure.
So
let's definitely do that. Let's begin our transition. People who keep up with the show know that we now do ads, kind of. So let me give you our advertisement pitch for our new advertiser, Smash Cart. Tired of getting your groceries in perfect condition? Are you wishing you could relive the smash bread of your youth? Introducing Smash Cart, where each product you order arrives in the crushed state you crave. Pristine eggs are a thing of the past. We'll deliver them right to your house. No kidding. We'll throw them at your windows and even your pets if they're in the range. Need toilet paper? So do your freshly soiled trees. We'll toss each open roll over the branches so your trees can fish them out. Gosh, I don't know how I wrote that sentence. Join now and receive $30 toward 30 orders. That's $1 per order. That's $1 per order, 1 order per month. It's contractual. Sorry, but that's 30 orders a month. Are you going to get Smash Cart? I don't know. It sounds like an app that I'm interested in, but
is that an app? Is it?
Like, it's the new Uber Eats. It's the new Uber Eats Smash Cart. Get your groceries right to your door.
So it shows up in a cart that's already smashed?
I have to see the terms and conditions regarding that. But
I'm not clear if it's someone drives to your house, hands you like a square cube box, or if it's a cart that smashes into your door.
It's a cart. It smashes into your location. Just maybe Paul Dano ordered Smash Cart at the wake for the what's the name? It just happened to have the guy.
I'm not sure why would a store allow themselves to be partnering with Smash Cart? Is it I
don't know how anybody partners with half of these tech companies. Some of these crazy tech companies are ridiculous.
You're right. It's just all these crazy tech companies. It's just one of the many.
26-year-old ambassador for the company, and he just knows how to smooth talk some like 70-year-old boomer who's just like, I gotta be online. Does your thing have NFTs? Can I send NFTs on that Smash Cart?
Yeah, it's monorail for a whole new generation.
So check out Smash Cart. That's what we got for you. What's the spoilers you wanted to get into first, Dan? Was it the Paul Dano stuff? Who, by the way, has a Criterion release. If you didn't know, his movie Wildlife is on Criterion Collection.
I know. Obviously, the big conversation with the movie was Robert Pattinson being Batman, and then you got some stuff about Zoe Kravitz being Catwoman. But for me, the real standout was I was really excited about Paul Dano being the Riddler. Paul Dano is a tremendously gifted actor who only picks weird roles. He's one of those people that only picks roles that interest him. If you've seen Swiss Army Man or prisoners. You know that Paul Dano has a taste for roles that give him just a lot to do, specifically in like he tends to play characters that get beat up and picked on by life, even his more quote mainstream roles, like something in There Will Be Blood or Little Miss Sunshine. He plays kind of weird, neurotic people that get stepped on by life. So it made a lot of sense that he's going to play the Riddler. And what was surprising for me, first off, is the Riddler isn't in a lot of the movie. He's a presence that's very felt. Like, obviously, everyone is talking about the Riddler. It's much like Poochie. Whenever he's not on screen, everyone's like, where's Riddler? What's he going to do next? And so when he finally physically appears on screen, interacting with other characters, he really makes it count. There's the initial scene that's in the trailers where he gets picked up by cops and he just sort of smiles at them. And then there's the cumulative scene. And this is sort of where we need to get into the actual meat and potatoes of the plot, which is as the Riddler riddles begin to unfurl, clearly he is targeting the elites of Gotham, with one of his main targets, in fact, being the Wayne family. He initially tries to kill Bruce Wayne, and unfortunately, he almost kills Alfred, hence the hospital scene we were talking about earlier. And it's heavily hinted that the Riddler, Edward Nashton, is perhaps more connected.
Which could have been Edward Nygma. I don't know why. He's clearly using fake names. Why couldn't it be that?
They show several cards that could be his name.
I know.
Edward Nashton's become sort of a popular Riddler name. I believe it's also his name in the Gotham TV show. I may be incorrect on that. And I think some recent comics have also done Nashton. I'm not sure. But, I mean, he could be Edward Nygma for all we know. But he gets picked up, and he was an orphan in the Thomas Wayne orphanage, and there's a particular recurring sequence. The motive is Ave Maria, and there's like a charity concert where Thomas Wayne announces the revitalization program. It's very similar, actually, to the plot of the Batman Telltale games, which I don't know if you ever played those.
I did not.
This movie takes and steals from a lot of really good Batman stuff, which is probably one of the reasons it worked for me so much. But so his whole thing is, and then so finally Batman confronts him, and Paul Dano actually has first off, he does two things. First off, in his mind, he's been working directly with the Batman because he's been setting up all these corrupt criminal people, to be fair, and Batman's been forced into helping take them down, but in his twisted mind, they're working together because they are both masked people taking down the villains. But also, he has a whole beef with Bruce Wayne, partially because he's like, everyone was so worried about the orphan, but like, I was in an orphanage. And he says a bunch of real things about orphanages, which anyone who's worked in an orphanage, or specifically worked in orphanages in not the United States, in third world countries, will tell you they're not great. He talks about how every winter at least one of the babies would die from the cold, which is a real thing. He talks about how they were all stuffed in together, but all the attention and sympathy went towards Bruce Wayne, the orphan. Which, as far as villain motivations go, that's pretty good, especially if you're going with a deconstructionist realistic thing. And you actually get some Robert Pattinson being Batman, where he's slamming at the glass, going, "What are you doing? What's going next?" And Paul Dano gets to Riddler out and be all weird and exaggerated. And I'm not sure if he's playing the character as if he's neurodivergent or if he has some sort of mental illness. I mean, all of Batman's villains have some sort of mental illness, to be fair. But it's a really good performance. Like, Paul Dano, there's a fine line where this character, in my opinion, you could have easily crossed over just being sort of farcical and silly, and might as well be on the television show Gotham. But I think he does a good job of balancing an exaggerated, wacky villain performance with actually grounding him in something kind of menacing.
Do you remember in The Office when Angela breaks up with Dwight? I'm going
really.
somewhere, Daniel. Trust me. Why don't you have faith in me ever? I
don't know. I didn't react to anything you said.
Come on.
I was like, I don't.
Come on, Daniel.
I haven't watched The Office in years.
And then Jim and Pam go and stay at his inn, and they wake up in the middle of the night because someone is moaning, going, "Whoa," and it's Dwight, and he's crying. Paul Dano does that as Riddler twice in this movie. It's really funny.
He does. Yes, he does.
I'm just expecting Jim to knock on the window. You okay, bud? I hope you're enjoying your stay at the Arkham Asylum.
Yeah, it really made my audience uncomfortable, believe it or not.
Just being like
him
manic?
moaning and being like what he is in the movie. They weren't sure what to react to. Like, it was very uncomfortable, which I think is desired effect.
I think for this movie in general, if you've read a lot of the comics or just engaged a lot of Batman media, I won't even beyond movies, I'll say it's expected, because like Riddler as a character is like Batman in that he's brilliant, competent, and also doesn't like bad people, but he just is delusional in thinking by killing people he's not also one of the bad people. And not just killing people, but like Jigsaw-esque killing people. At least that's more Arkham City themed, but I don't know, I guess I haven't read many comics with him in it, but
it's very in line with the Earth One Jeff Johns Riddler.
And when he of course loses control is when he's just going insane. It's when he really falls apart, and Dano does that. Yeah,
his actions and motivations, like the whole like Jigsaw style puzzles, like the scene where he's like trying to make the guy answer riddles or blow him up, which is great. Like that's
very good scene.
Yeah, really one of the more comic booky scenes in the movie. That stuff is kind of what's like in the Arkham games, which one of the writers in the film is admitted that he's a fan of the Arkham games. So I definitely got a lot of vibes, both you mentioned in the visuals, but also in the characterization of Riddler, as well as in
Falcone's room that he's in, and like the fact that it just looks like outside Gotham, but it's inside. I was like, that's just an Arkham game. It looks like Unreal Engine. It's awesome.
Good stuff. But the characterization of like the actual like mannerisms and the way Paul Dano acts is very much his own decision, which I really like.
Yes. But
this all leads into his cumulative plan, where it turns out he was planning on blowing up Gotham, because doesn't everybody? Every villain at some point tries to blow up Gotham for some reason. And it's this one where, by his own plan, if he floods Gotham by blowing up places at strategic points, and it forces everyone into like their, I think it's the MetLife. I don't know what the name is in Gotham, but it's like, I think it's like the MetLife Stadium or something. And his followers, because he's been posting videos on
Reddit,
not YouTube, Reddit. It's unnamed, but
deep web Reddit.
But it's great because he goes, "Hey guys," in the video, which
he didn't have to be called the Riddler. He could have been called the Redditor.
Redditor.
Probably not the only person on the planet who said that.
But he's been talking to his. At first, I thought it was like hilarious lack of attention, because the comments just say things like "rifles are good," but I realized it's actually them chatting with each other, because at first I thought they were like, what would school shooter types comment in a video? And they would just comment the words "rifles are good" or something. But no, they were like actually chatting with each other. And so he forces everyone to one stadium, and then his followers are going to shoot them. And this is where I think there's some comment, like some reviews online, some of the negative reviews of the movie said things like, "This just isn't the movie for the now. You know, in this day and age, I don't feel comfortable with this type of thing." It's like, well, this is a Batman movie, and most Batman stories involve a maniacal bad guy who gets other people to shoot other people.
That's Riddler had his own cronies. That's
in this movie, they don't have goofy question mark things. They all dress like the Zodiac Killer. And so Batman goes and he beats up a bunch of guys, but then he realizes, because one of the running things of the whole movie is Riddler and everyone else is like, and there is a groan worthy scene where Catwoman is like, "Why do you care about these white privileged people?" which got audible groans from my audience. But partially because I feel like the later scene with Riddler actually does the same theme, but more like impactful and more nuanced way, where it's like, yeah, why is Batman super concerned about saving these corrupt guys in power versus all the little people who are being affected, namely Catwoman's friend/girlfriend who gets kidnapped, and later it turns out she was viciously murdered by Carmine Falcone? Why is everyone focusing on these guys and not the little guy? Why, in Riddler's point, is why is everyone so worried about Bruce Wayne, who, orphaned into riches and still taken care of, living in a tower, versus all the people that Gotham's forgotten, et cetera, et cetera. And I feel like Riddler's point is more impactful. And this all culminates in Batman as a moment where he beats up all the bad guys. He realizes that they are using his own methods, because early in the movie, it's in the trailers, Batman says, "I am vengeance." And then when they interrogate one of the Riddler henchmen, they're like, "Who are you?" He says, "I am vengeance." And Batman has a moment of realization where it's just like, maybe I shouldn't just punch everyone. And he looks down, and he in a visual moment, he looks down and the stadium's flooded, and he just jumps down from the rafters, and visually he is going down to the people. He's going down the muck and the mire, and he lights a flare, and he reaches out his hand to the incumbent mayor, and the first person to grab his hand is the kid from the funeral, the kid who his father is dead. And so there's this unspoken telekinetic connection between Batman and all orphans. But he holds the hand of the people and leads them into safety. And it's a nice little moment. Like, it's like Batman's big heroic moment isn't he beats up the Riddler. It's he actually goes and he helps people. And he realizes that perhaps he shouldn't be just a guy of vengeance. Perhaps he should be something greater, something more. Batman is a symbol, et cetera, et cetera. You've heard this before in other Batman things, but I like the way it's played out here. And I think it's an interesting moment where you will see in subsequent films. This is something my wife and I were talking about, which is I definitely think that the arc of Bruce Wayne across these movies is going to be him becoming more like Bruce Wayne, like realizing he'd do just as much good, if not more, as Bruce Wayne than just Batman. Absolutely. Which is one of the things in Zero Year by Scott Snyder, who gets a thank you in the credits, and who wrote specifically a story about Riddler taking over the city because he's the Riddler. And I think a lot of this movie will be judged in hindsight to what it leads to in subsequent Batman movies. But for me, like, that's the thing that holds the movie together. Even if, the interpersonal Batman stuff isn't super strong, it's definitely the stuff in the movie you're going to remember the least. Most reactions I'm getting from people in our Facebook group and on Twitter is they love the detective stuff. They like that Batman is the world's greatest detective for once. I've been banging this drum forever, which is just give me a Batman movie where he has to stop a serial killer. I don't want to see him use a bunch of gadgets and fight, Clayface or something. I want to see him do the things he does in most of the comics and cartoons and video games and every Batman medium except movies for some reason. And they delivered in that regard. But yeah, I thought to me that thematically all was pretty strong. It all worked for me, which I don't know how you feel about it, but
it's there. It's definitely good. I'm not like going crazy about it or not even crazy. I'm not necessarily like, it's doing what I want a movie to do anyway, which is having a theme and sticking to it, having a tone and sticking to it. It's a competent movie. My boss texted me pretty much right when I got home, was like, how was it? And I was like, it is a good movie. It's well made, and all the stuff that I want a movie to do it's doing. But like I said, I don't know. I see what you're saying, like, and like I got that at the end. I was like, oh, okay, his arc was like becoming more like a human being and caring about people,
a real human being. Yeah,
he's like when he's talking to Selena Kyle about which we haven't even talked about Catwoman much. I feel like one of the best scenes is that scene I talked about where Catwoman is helping out Batman by infiltrating the club. Really, just awesome scene.
That stuff's great. Yeah.
But anyways, he's talking to her. And Selena's like, my friend's dead. And Batman's just like, who cares? And you're like,
I love that Batman in this movie is kind of the worst. He is uncaring. He is flippant. He's mean to the only father figure he has for no reason.
Yeah,
he doesn't care about people.
He is 2 years into this venture, not so sure it's working out. And he has to learn that, well, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. And so he's trying not to, be insane.
His character arc is very similar to Arnold Schwarzenegger's in Terminator 2.
I compare to The Godfather, and I'm the silly one.
Well, he's just like, I'm being facetious, but he's like, I know why humans cry.
Yeah, no, it's true.
That's kind of what Batman does in this movie.
And he rides a motorcycle off into the distance. I get it. I get what the movie's doing, and I meant to tee this up so I could reference who it was, at least give a shout out to them on Letterboxd. But a guy on Letterboxd noticed that he felt one of the coolest gadgets was the eye camera, because so much of the film is about what's seen and what's not seen.
Yeah.
And both in terms of characterization, like the orphan stuff with Riddler, and in terms of everything else, like Selena Kyle's drama of being a prostitute's child, or not even, I guess you could say dancer, but, a subjugated woman's child to Falcone. Not being seen, stuff like that. It all fits the theme and tone. But again, that's what I want a movie to do anyway. So it's like, that's it. It's not necessarily blowing my socks off. Like when I was thinking about this as being the most comic book feeling, the most Batman comic book detective feeling movie, I was like, but out of the Batman comics I've read, like it'd probably be in the middle if it was a comic adaptation.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm just transitioning away from Batman as a character being interesting now that I've been opened up to the other world of live action superheroes recently. But yeah, I saw that. I saw what was happening, Dan, with his character arc, and it was pretty good.
It's pretty good, and
I think this is a great place to start. And I'm very excited to see more. And the fact that you said that there's going to be some TV shows will be neat to see. I think that'll be fun to watch. Poor Colin Farrell's going to be wearing makeup a lot on set.
He's a producer on that Penguin show.
Man, so I guess he likes it. He's like, yeah, give me the makeup. Yeah.
Getting into the spoiler.
The worst scene in the movie.
I was very mixed on it. I mean, first off, I love Arkham Asylum as a location. I love it as a storytelling device. One of the things we disagree on is I love the Grant Morrison Arkham Asylum comic.
I'll have to try and read it again, but I don't like it.
You don't like Year One. You don't like Arkham Asylum.
I like Killing Joke. I like Long Halloween. I like Batman Hush.
See, I'm mixed on Killing Joke personally. So
Death in the Family's good. Batman good. Black Mirror is good.
Great. That's a great comic.
Obviously, the Dark Knight Returns is good. No complaints there. I like the art even in Dark Knight Returns.
My point is saying I love Arkham Asylum. I was excited when they mentioned it. I couldn't wait to see it. And their version of Arkham Asylum is really weird. All of the
locations in this movie are tight.
Close.
And yeah, in this one, it's super tight. It's whatever.
But so early on in DC fandom, like 2 years ago, they announced that Barry Koenig, I don't know how to say his name, was playing
Ezra Miller.
Miller is playing. They're like, he's playing this guy. It's a very minor character from the Year One comic.
And we got when the credits showed up at the end of the movie, I just audibly went out loud. Who's that? Yeah. Which character was he?
Unnamed Arkham inmate. But almost immediately everyone assumed that was a red herring. Immediately the rumor mill started going that he's playing the Joker. And in fact, the 4-hour cut they showed of this movie at screenings, which to be fair, it's not like the intended Reeves cut. Matt Reeves of his own said he hadn't finished editing the movie when they started showing it at test screenings. Includes an earlier scene where Batman encounters this character, which I'm glad they cut that because that would have been very distracting and silly. And so Riddler is bemoaning his fate as an unseen Arkham inmate, and a distinct cadence starts telling him that he did a great job, he shouldn't be sad, and it's obviously the Joker. Matt Reeves later confirmed it's the Joker in interviews and stuff. Barry Koenig, who you may remember as Druig, the mind control guy from Eternals / he was someone in Dunkirk. He's one of those actors that just suddenly was in everything all of a sudden. He's playing the Joker, apparently. And man, oh man, I'm saying this. We've established that I'm a big Batman guy. I love some Batman. I've watched the whole Gotham show, which is terrible. I've watched every cartoon of Batman. I played all the video games. I read copious amounts of comics. But man, I'm kind of sick of the Joker.
Worst scene in the movie.
It doesn't tonally fit with the rest of the movie. It's very weird.
It feels like, okay, first off, I don't know if you noticed this, but the amount of makeup they show of this character and prosthetics.
People thought it was Two-Face. People in my theory thought it was Two-Face.
My wife wished it was Two-Face, which could have been interesting.
I think Harvey Dent works as a better character in these movies before
Two-Face. Two-Face. Frankly, I think people could be excused for thinking it was Dane DeHaan Green Goblin because the makeup did not look good. It looked real bad. This was actually in my negatives. This thing. Which I couldn't get into, of course, but this is the negatives I was talking about where I was like, it's just the worst choice that happened in the movie because it feels like a super villain friends team up. Like every villain is Lemons from SpongeBob. from Spider Bob. But that's what this feels like. It wasn't good.
This we agree on, Melvin.
I think this is a terrible idea. They could have done anybody in the Rogues Gallery.
Yes.
That would be interesting to see, even somewhat pair up with Riddler. Like I would have I honestly would have preferred if they just introduced the paranormal by having the killer puppet in Arkham Asylum.
Yeah, Scarface.
Like
that you could play that off as he's crazy. He's crazy. He thinks the puppet's talking. Whatever. Give me Clue Master. That would have been better than Riddler. Riddler and Clue Master hit the streets and try to turn God. Yeah,
or Hush, because that's another orphan. That would have been great too.
I was shocked Thomas Elliott wasn't in this movie. Like Tommy Elliott. Like that would have been great.
That would have been really, really good.
Like, yeah, Alfred could be like, your friend Tommy Elliott's trying to reach you. And he's like, you're not my father, you know.
I don't have any friends.
You know. Yes, because to me, the joy of doing something like this, doing a grounded, realistic, we're doing our own Elseworlds Batman thing, is you can play in the Batman. Batman has a great rogues gallery.
Condiment Man.
Condiment King. But like, there's so many great like serial killer like guys you could do. Doll Maker, Professor Pig.
Yeah, Professor Pig would have been really cool.
That would have been sick, right? Yeah, do the whole Circus is Strange. That stuff would have been cool.
And they mentioned circus stuff, that Alfred worked at a circus, which is interesting. But like...
Yeah, that's a neat little detail. Yeah,
come on.
Because I think Hush... I know some people don't like Hush because he's kind of one-dimensional as a villain. Like, he's very much a run-trick pony as a villain, granted. But he would be great for this specific thing, because you're doing a whole thing with the Wayne legacy, right? That's the whole theme. So someone who specifically has a strong tie to the Waynes and hates them, that's a great like villain that you can like play with, you know. I would really want Killer Moth would be great. Do Rat Catcher.
I actually thought because of the makeup, I was like, is that Man Bat? That would be crazy. Like that.
Yeah,
we're just doing it.
It's just a guy who vaguely looks kind of like a bat, you know. per Kurt Langstrom. But yeah, so like the Joker trick, especially we just had the Joaquin Phoenix Joker movie. Again, it's one of those things where not only are we getting Joker overload, but you just saw a extremely Oscar-winning Joker performance. Why would you immediately introduce another one who's just going to never be compared to
I think it's a producer choice. I think this is a producer / Warner Brothers.
You think like Walter Hamada was just like, people like that Joker guy, and then maybe you could do your own version of Harleen Quinzel, too.
Bad choices.
Yeah, I would say one thing I like about the movie is you simultaneously have John Turturro doing a very grounded regular gangster performance, contrasted with Colin Farrell doing a more exaggerated. Like, it makes sense that Gotham, because I think a lot of DC villain type things, especially like the Nolan Batman movies, really did this, where everyone kind of gives similar-ish takes on the material, right? Like, you don't have a lot of exaggerated performances. Like in Suicide Squad, even, you have straight men and then you have weirdos. So you have Amanda Waller and Bloodsport, who are playing straight, to the exaggerated Polka Dot Man, Ratcatcher 2 type characters. I like that in this movie, they kind of seem to more embrace the idea that you're going to have some really exaggerated weirdos, you're going to have gangsters, you're going to have kind of like femme fatale characters. Like, Gotham is a rich tapestry of characters that all exist all at once. Even still, throwing in what feels like a character from Gotham or Titans into your prestige, slow burn superhero movie, it just doesn't fit. It felt like I was watching someone spliced in their fan film in the middle of the movie. It felt very weird. Or even Paul Dano doing the same thing, it looks sillier when he's goofing around with his buddy Joker or whatever. It just, I agree. It felt like someone got in Matt Reeves' ear and was like, I know your movie's already like 4 hours, but if you could just throw in some Joker in there, that'd be really tight. We need to sell some toys and t-shirts.
My theater was like, oh man. And I was like, come on.
My theater did not have that reaction.
I was just so annoyed about it. It's the worst.
Oh, who knows? Maybe it blows us away. Maybe this is like kind of like a, test
maybe he's
pilot,
in the show and not in the next movie.
Maybe. Or maybe. I wouldn't mind if he never actually does any, like if he's just a background character, like maybe in the third one of these, it turns out he's been pulling the strings or something. Like that'd make me less annoyed. But like, I don't want to see Batman beat up Joker for the millionth time, especially when there's so many great Batman villains you could use instead. Yeah, we could sit here and name Batman villains we'd rather have in the movie than the Joker probably all day. Because there's so many fun ones. They all just like weird murder people that all have fun gimmicks. It's a great formula if you're going to do Seven / Zodiac, but with people wearing Batman costumes, there's weird serial killer people for days and days. Victor Zsasz. Just
why not?
You have him start.
There's got to be payphones in this Gotham. Like this Gotham looks old. It's got to be payphones.
Imagine that it's like a Die Hard movie with Zsasz, basically. Where he's like, "Find my phones, Batman."
It's just in one office building. He's got to run up and down the steps.
That'd be great. There's pagers and like drawers going off. There's like old like flip phones he has to answer.
That'd be fun.
Yeah, like the thing with Batman is because he's such a non-mystical, superpowered character. Is you could put Batman in a thing like the way you do Die Hard on a bus, Die Hard on a boat. You could do Batman, but in a Die Hard movie. Batman, but in a Zodiac killer movie. And what I'm worried about, and this is my underlying thing, where after the Christopher Nolan Batman movies were so successful, I think people decided, and after the Snyder movies did not perform the way they wanted to, I'm worried the feeling is just like Batman only works when you do a really gritty crime movie. Which is like, yeah, I like that, but Batman could do a lot of stuff. Like the whole Denny O'Neil run as writing Batman was just like Batman could just be like Indiana Jones. He could gallivant around the world, fight Ra's al Ghul. Batman can do a ton of stuff. He's he's a detective, he's an acrobat, he's an archaeologist, he does chemicals, he knows everything about peak physical performance. Batman is good at computers. He's a Renaissance man as far as action movie tropes. So you can just do tons of stuff with Batman. I don't know if any of that's what Matt Reeves and Robert Pattinson are interested in, granted, but man, I don't want more Joker. I don't know.
Yeah.
He's even in Titans. Choice. I don't know.
Bad choice. It's cringe, even.
Unless you got Mark Hamill back. That's the only way I would take it. If it's just like current Mark Hamill gets to act as Joker, I'd be down for that. Just put him in the makeup. He does the voice.
What do you got for recommendations, Dan?
So first off, I recommend seeing this movie. I think it's pretty good. It's 3 hours. If you love Batman, you'll probably like this thing. But so 2 recommendations. First for let me just click over to make sure I got it. I'm gonna make an interesting study Bible recommendation. I recently found a copy of it online for rather cheap, and I'm really pumped about it. However, right now on Amazon, the cheapest copy of it is $73 used. The new one is $300, so I don't recommend buying that one. But I'm a big fan of study Bibles, as we've established. And my feelings on certain things like the Message or the NCV, I'm a little mixed on those. I think the Message borders on being kind of like a reinterpretation at times, though I like Eugene Peterson. So with that, I recommend this. It's called the Parallel Study Bible. It's put out by Thomas Nelson. It's the New King James, the NCV, and the Message parallel to each other, but it also includes the study notes from the Thomas Nelson New King James Study Bible, which I really like that study Bible, the New King James Study Bible. You can find that on its own pretty cheap online. Christian Book periodically has sales on it for about $30 or so dollars. But here it's put in a really nice format where you can get, I think the Message, for example, as translation is interesting, specifically when you can compare it to the more accurate biblical text, like the New King James translation. In that context, I like the Message a lot more. And when you combine it with this other translation, as well as the New King James study notes, I think it has a nice reading experience. The other thing is the way the Bible is formatted. It's in 4 parallel columns, like a lot of parallel Bibles, except they include the study notes as a 4th column, which I think makes for the reading experience to be a lot easier. So if you ever used like a parallel Bible with 4 translations, this will be just as easy to read with the 4th column just being study notes. It's a really nice study Bible. It's a good one to round out your Bible collection, so to speak. And if you're someone who just likes having a lot of different translations, and you also are a fan of physical media as opposed to just having one of the Bible apps, I highly recommend this one. That said, with, like I said, the caveat that finding an affordable copy might be a little difficult. However, I was able to track one down somewhere. So maybe on eBay, maybe on one of those like book selling sites, you could find one if $74 is a bit steep for a used book. But anyone who buys a lot of Bibles and commentaries and stuff knows that it's actually not that expensive compared to other study Bibles. Unless you're a bargain hunter like I am. There's like new study Bibles right now. They're like $100, like pretty standardly. But that's what I got for that. So
my recommendation is a another podcast that I'm sure a lot of people, if they listen to like, I don't know, news podcasts, have heard an advertisement for it. It's called The Trojan Horse Affair from New York Times and Serial Productions. It is about in the UK, there was a letter that arrived to a government office saying that there was a Muslim plot to take over schools, public schools. And in response to getting this letter, a lot of people lost their jobs at certain schools. A lot of Muslims were kicked out of schools and not permitted to work in education again. There were new laws instated that they increased in restrictions on particular Muslim. I listened to this over the course of like 2 weeks, and it's been about a week since I finished it. And it becomes so much more than what I'm describing it as, because basically it changed like the fabric of English culture for a bit, and forever actually. That's why they're still doing it. And this particular podcast, the question they're seeking to answer, this journalistic podcast, is who wrote the letter, because it was an anonymous letter. It's missing a cover page. It's missing its last page. And the 4 pages that are there are particularly strange. And yet it's had such an impact, and yet no one's ever asked who wrote the letter. So these 2 journalists, one from the New York Times and one who, this is his first thing he's ever doing. His name's Hamza Sayed. He was in school. This was his project for school, and then out of school. The 2 investigate where the letters come from. And I got to say, this podcast is like, you will listen to the first episode and go right into the next one, and then right into the next one, as they continue to divulge and investigate where this letter is from, who it targeted, reasons for why it was written, why it's so damaging to put so much faith into this letter, and why it's so important to know who wrote it because of how much it's affected. I think it's also very valuable to listen to, as Christians, very valuable to understand why anti-Muslim, anti-Islamic rhetoric is very damaging for everybody, and why this particular story is so important. Yes, we are. If most of our listeners are Americans, not just saying that as though Canada doesn't exist, but I literally mean in the North Americas. So it's going to be hard to perhaps understand why this is so important for us too. But this is something, I mean, there's plenty of anti-Islamic rhetoric and systematic issues in terms of how Islam is treated here in the United States as well, and in the Americas. It's a good show, man. I'm telling you, it's part journalistic investigation, part personal journey as you listen to Hamza Sayed, who is Muslim, investigate it and question whether or not he's going to continue being a journalist or not, as he's investigating this particular thing. It's great. Totally check it out. I think it has a really good perspective on how journalism is investigated, and just a good perspective on how to interpret news as it's coming out, frankly. So definitely recommending The Trojan Horse Affair. 8 episodes. You could totally binge it in the day.
How long is each episode?
1 hour. Okay. 40 minutes to 1 hour. It's very good. So definitely check it out. Have you listened to it? I don't know. I know it's been being advertised all over the place for like the last 3 months. But...
I have not. I have heard of it, but I have not. Though based on your recommendation, I might actually check it out.
It's very good. It's very good.
I have countless podcasts just sitting
in your follow queue or whatever.
Yeah. So
what's great is this one was one where they just dropped every episode right away.
Okay.
They were just like, we're not doing week to week. Just put it out there. And it's very good.
I definitely appreciate that. For my, what you refer to as my fun recommendation, I'm just going to recommend a couple different Batman things, many of which I've mentioned here. So the sort of holy trinity of Batman comics that everyone has read, even the most casual comic book reviewers, of course, Year One, Dark Knight Returns, Killing Joke, which I consider to be they're all good. I'm not going to pretend like they're not good, but they're definitely, I don't think, the best Batman stories. They're just the ones that came out at a good time to really help shift the character. 2 of them written by Frank Miller. So I'm going to recommend the second tier of Batman comics everyone should read and are read by even the most casual comic reviewers first. The 2 Jeff Loeb written Long Halloween and Dark Victory, which were illustrated by Tim Stale.
who I believe got a shout out in the credits of this. The Long Halloween is sort of ubiquitously always cited as an influence in every Batman thing. The edition I have has a foreword written by Christopher Nolan and David S. Goyer, who did Dark Knight trilogy, obviously. This movie perhaps took the most direct references from that, both in that Batman investigates a murder mystery and has to interview and talk to a series of his own rogues gallery. And obviously the Halloween is the day of the first murder and the murders in this movie. The other set is the Earth 1 Batman series written by Jeff Johns, which this one took quite a few notes from. Even the detail that Martha Wayne was in Arkham is something that's from the Earth 1 Batman comics series. That one's pretty good as part of the whole DC Earth 1 series, where they just wrote partially as a way to just redo comics and create their own new origin stories by setting them into separate continuity. I recommend those. And of course, the Scott Snyder 0 Year series, which is it's also a retelling of Batman's kind of first year of being Batman, and specifically dealing with his own feelings around the Wayne legacy, as well as encountering the Riddler as an initial big bad. And it's also one of the first comics that, for me, took Riddler seriously. And of the recent reboots, Riddler is someone who can easily become a gimmicky, no different than like a Calendar Man or a Clue Master type villain. But Scott Snyder's writing of Riddler is quite good, and his writing of Batman is really good. Everything he wrote for Batman is great. And on top of all of that, right now on HBO Max, every Batman cartoon ever made is right there. As soon as the movie is over, my wife and I went home and we put on Batman the Animated Series, which debuted 30 years ago and is still good. It is perhaps the best version of the character in terms of outside of the Arkham games, where they just take every good thing about Batman and just throw it into a blender. It is the cartoon that gave us Mr. Freeze's current origin story. It gave us Harley Quinn. It gave us a lot of the things that you remember about Batman, all right there. Including a good version of Clock King, which is not easy to do. So Batman the Animated Series is right there on HBO Max. And then once you finish it, you can watch Superman the Animated Series, then Justice League, then Justice League Unlimited, all of which are right in that same continuity. Even Static Shock is in there. It's all on HBO Max. Watch all those shows. They're great. I love the episode where Static Shock teams up with Shaquille O'Neal. The most random thing. Shaq is a big Superman fan, and he partially did it because he wanted to later show up in an episode where he meets Superman, and it just never came together, apparently.
Aww.
Sad. Those are my Batman recommendations. And if you haven't played it, the Arkham games are terrific.
Thanks so much for checking out this episode of Cinematic Doctrine. If you enjoyed this episode, consider leaving a review and subscribing to the podcast. And as mentioned before, Cinematic Doctrine has a Patreon. For as little as $3 a month, you're opted into a once-a-month movie poll where you decide a movie we discuss on the podcast. There are other unique benefits that come with supporting the podcast, so be sure to check that out at patreon.com/Cinematic Doctrine. A special shout out to those who support at the Art House Theater tier on Patreon. Thank you so much, Mom, Dad, Melanie, Shirley-Ann, and Thomas. You guys are the best, and your continued monetary support is greatly appreciated. Until next time, stay cool. Want some Cinematic Doctrine swag? You're in luck. We've got 3-inch Cinematic Doctrine logo stickers exclusive for Patreon supporters. Perfect for your travel mug or laptop. Head over to patreon.com/Cinematic Doctrine, link in the show notes, and choose the Independent Theater tier. Doing so will net you other perks too. But let's be real, the podcast stickers are the coolest perk. So get yourself some podcast stickers by supporting on Patreon.